Other relevant professionals and agencies may include, but are not limited to, psychologists, mental health professionals, medical professionals, Department of Health, DH, Department of Families, Fairness and Housing, DFFH, the Orange Door, police. Physical, mental and emotional capacity. Under the Education and Training Reform Act 2006, teachers must have a physical and mental capacity to undertake the duties of a teacher. This is important to ensure the safety and well-being of children and young people. Teachers should familiarise themselves with available resources in the event the teacher recognises they need support. Case studies. These hypothetical case studies are designed and stimulated to stimulate discussion and debate about what is considered appropriate professional and personal conduct for teachers, as well as appropriate strategies to prevent inappropriate conduct. Outcomes are not provided. Any case investigated by VIT is considered on its individual merits and context. Therefore, teachers should use these to reflect on their own practices within their specific context. Identify what issues are highlighted by each case study and use the reflective questions to guide further discussions. Teacher QN. Teacher QN is an early childhood teacher in a relatively large setting. They work in the 4-year-old kinder room with another teacher and an educator. Teacher QN's colleagues notice that they are late to work quite frequently in recent times and sometimes appears glassy-eyed and dishevelled. On this particular morning, Teacher QN rushes into work and the same colleague notices a smell of alcohol that appears to be coming from Teacher QN. The colleague watches Teacher QN closely and observes that their balance seems to be off and they're having trouble finding appropriate words to interact with the children. One of the children asks Teacher QN why they are being funny. The colleague confronts Teacher QN, who, after initially denying it, admits that they have been drinking and should probably not be at work. The colleague asks if there is something wrong, and they sense that this is more than Teacher QN simply having a big night out. Teacher QN denies that there's anything wrong and promises it will never happen again. The colleague decides not to report the issue. Over the next few weeks, the colleague notices that Teacher QN's behaviour seems to be repeating at regular intervals and decides to report the issue when Teacher QN trips over a child sitting on the floor, injuring the child. In a conversation with their supervisor, Teacher QN denies ever having been drunk at work and accuses their colleague of fabricating allegations. Teacher QN's supervisor can clearly see that they are under the influence during the conversation and feels there is no option but to suspend Teacher QN's employment until such a time as they can be assessed as safe to be in charge of children. The supervisor then advises VIT. Next case study, Teacher LC. Teacher LC is a geography and home group teacher in a secondary school. Teacher LC notices that one of their home group learners, Learner R, has recently come to school appearing withdrawn. Before school one day, Teacher LC monitors Learner R outside to find out what is wrong. Learner R discloses that their parents have been fighting every night and that they don't know what to do. Learner R goes on to say that their parents arguing has made them want to hurt themselves to take the pain away. Rather than refer Learner R to the school counsellor, Teacher LC takes it upon themselves to invite Learner R to meet them once a day for as long as it takes so that Learner R can talk and discuss their issues. Learner R takes LC up on the offer and the two meet every day for 6 months. Through these meetings, Teacher Elsie builds a strong rapport with Learner R. Teacher Elsie believes that Learner R may be suffering from depression, however does not report this, as Learner R's mood appears to be improving due to their daily meetings. One day, Teacher Elsie does not attend work due to being sick. Distressed due to Teacher Elsie's absence, Learner R attempts a self-harm at school. Another teacher intercepts Learner R's attempt and immediately makes a report and referral to both the school counsellor and principal. When the counsellor speaks to Learner R and asks what happened, they say, Teacher Elsie is the only one who has been there for me, and now they have left me too. There's nothing more for me here. Learner R is later diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Teacher Elsie investigated by the school for failing to refer the situation to leadership and appropriate professional bodies. Next case study, Teacher PV. Teacher PV is a prep teacher in a small country primary school. Teacher PV has been a member of the community for many years and is now teaching the children of some of the past learners. At the beginning of the term, Teacher PV noticed that one of the Learner H, who is the son of one of their past learners, has trouble remembering things, more so than a lot of other learners. Teacher PV also notices that Learner H is very small for their age and their language is broken, like that of a 3 or 4-year-old. As an experienced teacher, Teacher PV identifies that some tests could be completed on this learner to determine if extra support or intervention is needed to support Learner H's needs. Without knowing for sure, Teacher PV suspects that Learner H could be suffering from fetal alcohol syndrome disorder, as it is well known in some circles that Learner H's parents has suffered from substance abuse issues. Believing that they're acting on the best interests of the family, and as Teacher PV knows Learner H's parents, Teacher PV decides to set up a meeting to discuss Learner H's learning and development. Teacher PV does not inform any colleagues or leadership of this or consult with them on their best approach. At the meeting, Teacher PV suggests that Learner H has been affected by exposure to alcohol before birth, rather than outlining the learning and developmental data that they have gathered on Learner H. Learner H's parents is offended by these claims and outraged that Teacher PV, who is not a doctor or a psychologist, is suggesting this, stating that Learner H was a premature baby and that is why they are small, not because they have any issue with alcohol dependency from parents. Learner H's parents make a complaint to the school and Teacher PV is called in to discuss the situation with the principal. Some reflective questions. Do I have a personal belief or opinion that may affect the way I interact with learners? Am I familiar with all other professionals and agencies and when learners should be referred to them? Am I familiar with my workplace processes for referring learners to other professionals, agencies when needed? What are my professional obligations in relation to my physical, mental, and emotional capacity? Principle 1.4. Teachers maintain objectivity in their relationship with learners. Definitions. Teachers interact with learners without displaying bias or preference. Developing a good rapport with learners is an important part of being an effective teacher. However, teachers must ensure they maintain objective in their interactions with all learners and do not show bias or preference. A demonstration of bias or preference may impact the teacher's professional relationship with both that learner and other learners. Personal agendas. A teacher should ensure their motivations to interact with learners aren't for personal gain or gratification. Case studies. These are hypothetical case studies, are designed to stimulate discussion and debate about what is considered appropriate professional and personal for teachers, as well as appropriate strategies to prevent inappropriate conduct. The outcomes are not provided. Any case investigated by VIT is considered on an individual merits and context. Therefore, teachers should use these to reflect on their own practice within the specific context. Identify what issues are highlighted by each case study and use the reflective questions to guide further discussion. Teacher GS. Teacher GS is a grade 6 primary school teacher who is young and new to the profession. Teacher GS believes that they are very firm but fair with learners. However, most learners believe Teacher GS is to be overly strict, especially as a yard duty teacher. Teacher GS enjoys building relationships with learners and has developed a strong rapport with a few grade 6 students, whom Teacher GS loves to joke and tease, especially when talking about competitive sports. Some learners feel Teacher GS shows favouritism to a particular group, as Teacher GS is perceived to be far less strict with them than everyone else. The other learners feel overlooked and start to withdraw, showing their disconnect with the situation in their classroom. Parents of the excluded learners bring the issue to the attention of the school leadership team, and a discussion is held with Teacher GS. Next case study. Teacher DC. Teacher DC is a VCE English teacher who recently moved to the area and doesn't have a large social circle. He is popular among the learners and is well known for being friendly and joking around with them. There is one group of Year 12 boys Teacher DC is particularly close with and plays basketball with them every day at lunch. After a few months of participating in Teacher DC's English class, a number of learners asked the year level coordinator if they can join another teacher's English class. They advised the year level coordinator that they feel that they are slipping behind, as Teacher DC is always focused on supporting the male learners he plays basketball with. Reflective questions. What steps have I taken in the past to ensure my interactions with learners are objective? Do I have any personal need that may affect the way I interact with learners? What steps can I take to ensure that my personal needs do not influence the way I interact with learners? Principle 1.5. Teachers are always in a professional relationship with their learners, whether at the educational setting or not. The power imbalance between a teacher and a learner means there is potential for this to be exploited both during and after the professional relationship. While there may be grey areas in relation to a teacher-learner relationship, there are some actions that clearly breach the appropriate boundary. Teachers must ensure they take responsibility for establishing and maintaining appropriate professional boundaries with their learners. Definitions. Engages in communication with a learner beyond the boundary of a professional relationship without a valid reason. Although relationship building is an important part of teaching, all communications with learners should be purposeful, appropriate, and necessary to support learning. Teachers should only use communication methods that are approved by the workplace. Social media is not considered an appropriate professional method of communication. A valid reason may include, but is not limited to, supporting their education, discussing well-being issues within workplace guidelines, and building rapport to engage the learner. An invalid reason may include, but is not limited to, personal conversations outside the professional boundary or outside workplace guidelines, socializing outside professional boundaries and workplace guidelines, furthering a personal agenda. Has a sexual relationship with a former learner within 2 years of the learner completing their senior secondary schooling or equivalent. In all circumstances, the former learner must be at least 18 years before a relationship commences. Teachers are in a unique position of trust and influence over a learner. This can extend beyond the end of the professional relationship. The lengthened time between the conclusion of the teacher-learner relationship and the beginning of a sexual relationship is one factor that will be considered by VIT when determining the appropriateness of a teacher's conduct. Other factors that VIT may take into account include, but are not limited to, the emotional, social maturity of the former learner, the vulnerability of the learner, evidence of the nature the teacher-learner relationship, including the closeness, dependence, significance, and length of the relationship while at the education setting. Any misconduct of the teacher during the professional relationship with the learner. Touches a learner without a valid reason. Teachers must always act to maintain appropriate professional boundaries. Within appropriate professional boundaries, there is a consideration that touch is an important part of education, care, and relationship building. Teachers should always consider whether touching a learner is appropriate to their specific teaching context. For instance, an early childhood teacher or a teacher in a special needs schools would have many occasions where touching a learner is necessary. While not definitive, a valid reason would generally include whether touch was considered to and was provided to ensure the learner's safety or the safety of others, support the learner's education, provide comfort within an appropriate professional relationship. Teachers must also be aware that corporal punishment in schools is prohibited by law. The Child Wellbeing and Safety Act 2005, Victoria, states that physical violence committed against, with, or in the presence of a child is a type of reportable conduct. There are a number of situations where a worker or volunteer may make physical contact with a child for lawful reasons. This would mean the conduct or behaviour does not satisfy the definition of physical violence under the scheme. An example of lawful physical conduct includes physically restraining a child to stop them from hurting another person or themselves, or from destroying property. The use of force includes actions such as physical restraint of a child and the use of physical force to move a child, for example, removing a child from a classroom. Any force used by the worker or volunteer must be reasonable in all of the circumstances, and no more force should be used than is absolutely necessary. If the force used is not reasonable or is more than needed, the act could be physical violence. For more information of the use of force, physical violence, please refer to the Commission of Children and Young People. Socializes with learners, including online and via social media, outside of a professional context. Building rapport with learners is an important part of a positive learner-teacher relationship. However, a teacher should not act as a friend. Some informal interactions in the educational setting is perfectly appropriate, such as talking with learners at school events, formals, fundraisers, events, or fairs. Teachers generally should avoid socializing with learners outside of a professional context, as this goes beyond an appropriate professional relationship. This includes socializing in an online context, which may include social media, on gaming websites, or any other non-educational related platform. The context in which a teacher works and lives is of particular relevance to this principle of the code. Teachers should consider that what is appropriate in their current context, use the ethical decision-making model, and help to guide their behaviour, and speak with workplace leadership if they are unsure about how to best maintain appropriate professional boundaries. Unique position of influence and trust. The teacher-learner relationship is not equal. Teachers are in a position of authority and have a significant influence over their learners. The high level of trust within the teacher-learner relationship means that teachers must always be aware of this power imbalance and act in a way that is in the best interest of the learner and does not abuse this power imbalance. Case studies. These hypothetical case studies are designed to stimulate discussion and debate about what is considered appropriate professional and personal conduct for teachers, as well as appropriate strategies to prevent inappropriate conduct. The outcomes are not provided. Any case investigated by VIT is considered on its individual merits and context. Therefore, teachers should use these provocations to reflect on their own practice within their specific context. Identify what issues are highlighted by each case study and use the reflective questions to guide further discussions. Teacher NH. Teacher NH is a teacher of a regional town and a family friend with one of their learners. Teacher HN engages in private email conversations with the learner, as well as after-school activities such as driving lessons and shopping. The learner's parents G, are aware of Teacher HN's interactions with the learner and is initially supportive of their relationship, as the learner has been going through a tough time and parent G perceives Teacher HN as a stable influence in their life. As Teacher HN interacts with the learner becomes more frequent, parent G becomes uncomfortable. They ask Teacher HN to pull back and ask permission before engaging in any more one-on-one activities with the learner. Teacher HN does not abide by parent G's request and continues to see the learner without seeking permission. Parent G reports Teacher HN to the school principal, and their employment is eventually terminated on the basis that Teacher HN has breached professional boundaries in their interactions with the learner and parent G. Next case study. Teacher EK. Teacher EK has always lived in suburban Melbourne. However, after seeking an opportunity to live in a rural and regional Victoria, she accepts a graduate job at a local high school in a rural town. Initially, Teacher EK knows no one in the town, but as a friendly and social person, she is delighted when invitations to join local community groups arrive. Teacher EK is invited to join a cultural dance group. Upon arriving at the venue, Teacher EK realizes that many of the dancers were senior students at her high school or parents of the students she teaches. Aspects of the dance require Teacher EK to be semi-clothed. Even though she felt uncomfortable about it at the time, she didn't want to draw too much attention to herself by not conforming. The next day at school, some of her students asked her about the class, as they'd heard about her attendance from people in the class. Unsure of how to proceed due to potential professional conflicts, Teacher EK consults with school leadership and then removes herself from the dance class.